And then fear. I mean, we've got so much to fear at the moment, from swine flu to terrorism to economic collapse to energy dislocation that happens regularly in this country and in ours. And then there's the availability of this technology, the fact that the solar panels are getting better, the fact that you can now earn a living without back-breaking agricultural work in the middle of nowhere with your family. And that's the bit that I find the most miraculous and wonderful. So there are the 7 reasons, and that was, that's my perspective, that's my interest in when I come to considering nuclear energy. And I began thinking a few years ago that instead of 3 or 4 small, a few large nuclear reactors, what about if there were thousands of small nuclear reactors? And it was just an idea I had. I wasn't aware of Hyperion at that point, or the idea of small reactors, but I thought that would solve a lot of the problems that made me oppose nuclear power, because it would mean that the power wasn't centralized, that it wasn't run by big corporations, but that it could be owned locally. And at that point, such a thing didn't exist. And meanwhile, in Britain, something else was happening, which was that the government announced that they were going to create some eco-towns. And I was on a committee that was supposed to be advising them on this, but I pulled out of it because these eco-towns turned out to be not very eco at all, because they were all going to be hooked up to the grid. And that, for me, meant that they weren't really eco, or at least that one of them should, on an experimental basis at least, be off-grid. And again, the idea of a miniature nuclear reactor which would work together with renewable energy seemed to me a very logical vision of how an environmental solution could work, because we have to accept that renewable energy on its own is not yet ready for prime time. It just doesn't provide the reliability that we all come to expect and quite rightly think we need, because the world's organized that way. The green movement that I referred to earlier, which is coming towards nuclear power, hasn't quite got there yet, and one of the most important sticking points is what do we do with the waste? And of course, there is no answer to that I'm able to give you today, other than I think, personally, I believe it's something which is a surmountable issue, because although the waste is dangerous, it can be stored safely, and I think that the research into recycling the waste into more active materials is going very well. And so I think that it's a small gamble worth taking, with very little downside, as long as the waste is properly managed, which means that you do need security and all the implications that has. But I think that it's an answer that's, it's a solution that's worth considering, because it provides what I want to see, which is freedom, both from the perspective of the off-grid movement, but also in a wider sense. It provides us with freedom from energy dependence and freedom to live the lives that many of us want to live. So that is my argument in favour of small nuclear power. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.